Greetings and welcome to the basement. In this video, we're going to take a quick look at counting because that's a critical skill everybody needs. Specifically, we're going to take a look at counting in Playmaker. Let's dive straight into it. Of course, if we want to be able to see the results of our counting, we're going to need a text box. Let's go ahead and drop in our UI element here real quick. Of course, as per usual, I rename everything, even if it's not needed. So txt count display. Let us make sure center of the screen. So we'll just here go into the center using the shortcuts and do my usual on that. Let's see here. Let's do this. No, not best fit. A bad idea. You know what? Let's do it best fit because that is a bad idea. I'm going to show you. All right. So best fit. There we go. It's a horrible idea and you shouldn't do it. And so now it becomes the question of where would you actually put this? That is going to vary so much from project to project. There's no point really going much into detail on that. For the purposes of this simple demonstration, I'm going to put my state machine on the text box itself. We'll of course have to adjust this depending on how the project is set up. So let's get state machine in here. As per usual, I always reserve this first state as a setup state, even when it's not needed. There we go. What's the first thing I need? Well, I need a variable to keep track of time, right? I need to know how long I need to either count down or count up. Do counting up first. And so what I'll do is I'll just come over here, create a new variable called count time. We want this to be 0. And I am going to mark it to display in the inspector. So that way, whenever I select this, I do have under controls count time displayed right here. So that way I do not have to come in Playmaker windows to modify this. And I will initially set this to a count time of 5. So I count down from 5. So in my count state, here's the key thing. I'm going to want to use the add operator. I'm going to want to scale it by seconds. So if we come over here to actions, I could use int add. That would work. You just have to do a little bit of conversion. So I drop this in here. Oh yeah, that's right. Int add does not let you do a convert like that. Never mind, I lied. You do not want an int add. You have to use float. And of course, I'm going to, whoops. And actually, you know what? Let's count down because that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to add -1 to this. And I'm going to want to do this per second, always per second, because I need this scaled by time.delta time. Now, the thing that you might not need every time is the every frame. Depends on how you have your logic set up. Since I am going to want to spin in this one state, definitely, until my counting is done, I am going to want every frame checked here. But if instead you had a sequence of states, I'm going to real quick just create a very quick mock loop here. If instead you had something like this where additional logic had to be processed, you would not want every frame here. You would want to allow the logic flow to continue around in this loop. But in this particular case, do in fact not have that. There's delete transition. So I am going to check the every frame here. I am also going to need to float compare. Again, you do not have to have this in the same state. It's going to depend on your logic, but at some point, you are going to need a float compare to determine whether or not you need to do your branching logic. So I am going to compare count time, 0, give it a tolerance of 0.01. Doesn't really particularly matter in this case because I am going to check. Hang on, I'll just use fine. Finished, less than. So I'm going to check to see if count time is equal to or less than 0, which the odds of it being equal to 0 are almost none, but you never know. But if count time is equal to or less than 0, then I have things to do. I'll come back and finish that. Now, if I just left it at this, I'd have no visual display. I need to link it up with that text box. So I'm going to come over here. Under UI, text, set text, I'm going to want to do that. Probably do that there. And use owner, that is correct. In this particular scenario, keep in mind, if you do not have the state machine attached directly to the text box, this instead should be specify game object. But in this scenario, it is use owner. And for the text, I am going to want to convert count time, which again, this is horrible. And I'm going to want to do this every frame. This is our very basic setup. This would, like I said, this would be horrible if I want to display this, and we're going to see why in a moment. And so here, I don't know, do I have text color? I just random thought. Text color. What do I have under UI category here? My sets. Whoop. So here, on. Set color block, no. Scroll bar, slider, text. Now it looks like I don't get to easily set the color on the text. So what I will do here is I will just simply do another set text. I will change it to, we'll count down and it'll change to done. Let's hit the run button. Yeah, that is ugly. Do not want. Okay, so let's pretty that up a little bit. Hop back over here. First thing, we're going to need another variable. We're going to need an integer. Create another one. So this time I will call count time play. This I will set to an int. And I'll click on the wrong thing. There we go. That worked. Coming back over here, after I have modified my count time, I will set int value. Where'd you go? There you are. Now set count time display. Here's the convert count time. Remember, in C#, and this is a C# language specific feature, when you set a float to an int, you truncate that decimal point. And so instead of using count time, I would use count time display here. Of course, it immediately drops down. Oh, whoops, and I know a mistake I made there. Advantage/disadvantage of trying to burn through these relatively fast. Why is this not updating? Well, I'll tell you why it's not updating. I added in this. I forgot to check the every frame. Always double check on that. If you Generally speaking, you're either going to want everything checked as every frame or nothing when it comes to calculations like this. Rules to every exception, exception to every rule. Generally speaking, if you're doing calculations like this, get weird results, double check to make sure everything's consistent. Of course, it starts at 4 because it just immediately starts counting down. Now, that's not quite what I want, though. It's like, when it hits 0, I shouldn't see the 0. I should see the 1, right? You always have to tweak these little things. And so maybe instead of just truncating it, I want to round. So come over here, look at our math operations. And this is one of the weird ones on Playmaker. No round function on here, which is really, really, really weird. It's like, you type in the word round and you would expect to see something here, but it's not. And that's Playmaker. So yeah, I do kind of have to account for that weird little oddity. Now I can hack it. I could say instead, you know what, I want this to count for 5 seconds. So I'm actually going to bump this up to 6. And instead of checking to see if this is less than or equal to 0, I'll check to see if this is less than or equal to 1. Now I hit run, and the count's going to work exactly like I would visually expect it, and it's still only counting down 5 seconds. Okay, let's count up. We're going to need another variable for counting up. And then need total time, so I still need count time to inform me. You know what, let's just change this to count down. Come back to it. It'll be count up. And let's shift that over. Oop. Now I've got count up, so let's do it. It's largely the same logic, just we got a few things tweaked. So if I'm still going to have the float add, so let's open this up. So float add, let's toss that in there. But instead of adding to count time, I'm going to add to total time, and obviously I'm going to be adding 1 every frame and per second. Again, just like last time, the every frame is dependent on how you have your logic set up. The per second is not. That always needs to be. So I am going to actually add 1 to total time. I am then going to want to floor that. So again, I'm going to use the setInt value to my display. Only this time I will convert total time, and again, every frame. I will then display that. Every frame. And then, notice here, the logic's pretty danged identical, just to have a few different variables. And then, of course, I need to do a float compare, and this time my float compare I'm going to use 2 variables. I am going to compare my total time to my count time. Again, I'll use a tolerance 0.01. And if it is equal to or greater than this time, so if total time is equal to or greater than count time, I'm done. And again, I will check this every frame. And off it goes. Oops, man, if I'm counting to 5, forgot to change that back. Back over here to our variables. So again, I am counting to 5. It's actually going to count from 0 to 4. Again, I can clean that up a little bit because I would expect it to count from 0 to 5. Oops. I could, after calculating out the count display time here, I could do an int add. And I could add to count display time the value 1 every frame. And now I start off counting from 1. And then as soon as I get to 5, it goes done. All right, one last thing. And to make this point, I am going to introduce a couple of errors. So I mentioned at the very start of this that I did not want to use best fit. Best fit was a horrible idea. Try that. Why? Okay, let's say that instead I am trying to count up to 5,000. Oh, 50,000. There we go. Making it stupidly large just to make this point. And because I don't actually want to have this sit and like run for minutes to make my point, I am going to uncheck the per second here. So now I am effectively adding 1 per frame, whatever my frame rate happens to be, which I can assure you is pretty darn fast. So it starts off large. Oh, right. And actually, to make this, again, I am exaggerating things here by quite a bit. Actually, here, let's on. I am being very silly with this. But it does show a very valid error. Notice how the size changes as the digits increase. And now it's smaller and it's moved in the box. And eventually this would increase and get smaller again and shift positions. So the point being is that best fit is not a good thing to use when you know that there is a possibility that the number could change or the size of it can change. This gets really bad with like text, actual text, not numbers. So if you know that numbers are going to be changing, honestly, your best bet is just to figure out, what size do you want? And setting according to that. And that is counting Playmaker. Again, the logic is nearly identical. It's just for counting down, you have your count time, subtract 1, scaled by time.delta time with the per second checkbox. And you have a float compare that checks to, for the branching logic once you're finished counting down. And counting up needs an extra variable to hold the accumulated total time. And you just compare the total time to the count time, again, to make that determination. For all of these, you're going to want the per second for either counting down or counting down or counting up. The every frame is going to depend on your logic as to whether or not you're going to just sit and spin in a single state, in which case you want the every frame, or if you are going to be needing to cycle through multiple other states, in which case you will not want the every frame. Hopefully this short focused video is of use. If you do find it useful, well, there is a like button down there by the video. And if this has been a waste of your time, well, the dislike button is right next to it. Until next time.